Silence is the sharpest weapon you will ever carry because it is the language of power. Most people have been conditioned to believe that victory is won by being louder, faster, or more aggressive, but the truth is the opposite. The person who knows how to remain silent when provoked, when challenged, when someone tries to pull them into a war of words, is the one who holds all the control. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you are teaching your enemy that you cannot be moved. They expect you to argue. They expect you to lash back. They expect you to validate their attack with a response. But when you give them nothing, you crush their expectation and take away their power. That silence is not weakness, it is strength restrained. And strength restrained is terrifying to anyone who seeks to break you. Think of it like this: noise is cheap, but silence is expensive. Anyone can shout, anyone can rant, anyone can throw accusations and make scenes, but it costs nothing to do that. What costs something is the discipline to remain still, calm, and composed when everything around you is trying to shake you. The mind that can stay quiet is the mind that is in control. When your enemy throws words at you like knives, waiting for you to bleed and strike back, silence becomes your shield. And what happens is unexpected. They stab at you, but when you refuse to bleed, when you refuse to engage, they start to crumble, because the energy they are feeding on is denied. Their power is in your reaction, and silence denies them that power entirely. Silence also creates an unsettling aura. People don't know how to read it. They get nervous when you don't explain yourself, when you don't defend yourself, when you don't respond on their timeline. Most people live in noise and constant reaction, so when they face someone who chooses stillness instead, it becomes uncomfortable. That discomfort grows in their mind and begins to work against them. They start to doubt themselves. They start to question if they really have the upper hand, and eventually, their own insecurity becomes the blade that cuts them. Your silence plants seeds of doubt in their head that grow larger with every passing second you refuse to react. When you understand the power of silence, you also understand timing. Silence is not about saying nothing forever. It is about saying nothing until the right moment comes. Silence forces others to reveal themselves, to show you their weaknesses, to expose their strategies. In their impatience, they make mistakes, they talk too much, they give away what they should have kept hidden. All because they are desperate for you to break the silence. This is why silence is not passive, it is active warfare without lifting a weapon. You let them destroy themselves while you stand unmoved. Every second you remain quiet, you are tightening the noose around their own words and actions, and eventually they hang themselves on the rope of their own impatience. But silence is not just about withholding words, it is about withholding energy. When you can train yourself to withhold the energy that people try to pull from you, you become untouchable. The enemy cannot manipulate what you do not give. If you refuse to argue, refuse to explain, refuse to be baited, you are building an unshakable wall they cannot penetrate. This wall does not need to be loud, it does not need to be obvious, but it is unbreakable because it exists in your discipline. And discipline is what most people lack. They crave quick reactions, they crave to see emotions spill out, and when you do not grant them that satisfaction, you dominate them without lifting a finger. What silence also does is force respect, whether your enemy admits it or not. Deep down, they know they cannot control you, and that unsettles them. People only respect what they cannot control, and when you demonstrate that you will not dance to their tune, they are forced to see your strength. They may never say it, they may never show it, but inside they are learning that you are not someone to be played with. Respect doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from restraint, from the refusal to be pulled into chaos. Now understand, this silence is not cowardice. It is not surrender. It is the most aggressive stance you can take in psychological warfare. The battlefield is not always physical, it is mental, and silence gives you the higher ground. It keeps you elevated while others sink into noise and self-destruction. It allows you to conserve energy, maintain clarity, and stay 2 steps ahead, because the one who speaks least often sees the most. And the one who sees the most has the ultimate advantage. In silence, you observe, you study, you learn, and then you act when the moment is undeniable. That is how you defeat without ever raising your voice. So when someone tries to draw you into conflict, remember that your silence can speak louder than any argument you could craft. When someone tries to bait you into lowering yourself, remind yourself that silence is your shield, your weapon, your discipline. Stand still, stand calm, let them unravel, let them exhaust themselves, and know that you have already won. Because silence is power, silence is control. And silence is the way you defeat enemies without saying a single word. Confidence without words is one of the most powerful tools you will ever carry into any room, because it communicates dominance without requiring a single explanation. When you enter a space, your presence is already speaking before you do, and that presence is either projecting strength or surrender. Most people think words build influence, but it is actually the energy, posture, and discipline of your body that speaks louder than any argument you could create. If you walk in with your shoulders back, chin steady, eyes direct yet calm, you are already telling everyone in that room that you cannot be shaken. People read body language before they ever hear your voice, and if your body tells the story of someone in control, you have already won the battle without needing to move your lips. Think about what happens when someone challenges you. If your body fidgets, if your eyes dart, if your hands tremble, you are already giving away control before a single word escapes. On the other hand, if you stand still, calm, rooted in place, your silence amplified by your steady presence, the other person begins to second-guess themselves. They expect resistance, they expect defense, they expect chaos, but when you remain unmoved, you disrupt their rhythm. That disruption is not small. It is the seed of doubt planted inside their mind. They begin to feel that maybe they underestimated you. Maybe you see something they don't. Maybe you are stronger than what they imagined. And all of that happens without you saying anything at all. Confidence without words is also about controlled stillness. Stillness makes people uneasy because most people are addicted to motion, noise, and reaction. When you show that you are not addicted to that chaos, when you can stay still under pressure, you are demonstrating a level of mental discipline that feels untouchable. Enemies rely on your reactions to feel powerful, but when you refuse to react, when your stillness absorbs their chaos and reflects nothing back, they begin to lose their grip. They cannot control you because they cannot predict you. And unpredictability creates fear. The less predictable you are, the more people tread carefully around you, and the stronger your silent confidence becomes. Understand that silence, combined with body language, is not passive. It is active dominance. You are controlling the space with your posture, with your eyes, with the energy you radiate. People sense energy even if they cannot describe it. They know when someone is hiding fear, they know when someone is insecure, and they know when someone is unshakable. That is why training yourself to project confidence in silence is more important than any words you could craft. You can prepare speeches, arguments, and explanations, but the reality is most people will judge you before you ever open your mouth. And once they believe you are strong, everything else you say or don't say carries that weight. The truth is, you don't need to prove yourself with words. You prove yourself with how you carry yourself. The person who is loudest is rarely the strongest. Loudness often masks weakness, but silence paired with strength radiates authority. Authority doesn't beg to be seen, it doesn't force itself, it simply exists and demands recognition without effort. When you embody that level of presence, people shift around you. They hesitate before challenging you. They measure their words differently in your presence. That hesitation is not accidental. It is the result of your unspoken dominance. But here is the part most people overlook. Confidence without words does not come from pretending, it comes from preparation. You cannot fake silence and strength. You must build it. You build it by putting yourself in difficult situations and training your body not to flinch. You build it by learning to master your breathing, steady your eyes, control your movements. You build it by disciplining your mind so that chaos around you does not shake your inner state. When you cultivate this level of inner mastery, silence becomes natural. You don't need to defend. You don't need to explain. You don't need to argue. You simply exist in that power, and others feel it. Confidence without words is also about being comfortable with discomfort. When you are silent, people will try to provoke you, test you, pressure you to break. Most people cannot handle silence because it feels awkward. But when you lean into that awkwardness, when you own it instead of fearing it, the silence becomes a weapon. They break before you do. They speak too much, they reveal too much, they expose themselves because they cannot handle what you can. That is the true meaning of control, making others surrender to what you are strong enough to endure in every encounter. Remember this, your body speaks volumes, your eyes hold more power than words, your silence is sharper than any argument. You do not need to waste energy proving yourself to anyone. True dominance is quiet. It is the quiet that shakes people, that forces them to see strength they cannot measure. And once they feel it, they know instinctively that you are not someone who can be manipulated, provoked, or defeated. That is how you win without words. Not by trying harder, not by shouting louder, but by carrying yourself with such unshakable confidence that silence becomes your greatest weapon. Power without words often comes from the discipline of your eyes, because your gaze has the ability to paralyze someone before a single word is spoken. The eyes reveal everything: fear, hesitation, weakness, insecurity, and they also project everything: strength, authority, composure, confidence. Most people underestimate the influence of eye contact. Yet it is one of the sharpest tools you can use when you want to command a situation in silence. When you lock your eyes on someone without flinching, without darting away, you are sending a message far louder than words. I am not afraid. I am not uncertain. I am not moved. That steady gaze unsettles those who want to control you because it denies them the validation they are seeking. They are looking for a break in your focus, a crack in your armor, but when you refuse to give it, their confidence begins to fracture. In every confrontation, the first battle is always psychological. Enemies often throw words, aggression, or manipulation your way to gain ground, but the real fight is happening beneath the surface. When your eyes stay locked, calm, and steady, you are signaling control over the situation without a single interruption. This is where people make mistakes. They think dominance requires aggression, but aggression is desperate, it is loud, and it exposes too much. A controlled gaze, on the other hand, is silent dominance. It makes the other person feel examined, exposed, measured, and in that silence they begin to question themselves. The human mind craves reassurance, and when you refuse to offer it with your eyes, you strip away their power. You are telling them, you cannot break me, you cannot move me, you cannot reach me. Maintaining control of your eyes is also about mastering restraint. Most people use their eyes as a release for emotion. They roll them when annoyed, they widen them when surprised, they narrow them when angry. That is weakness because it gives away what is happening inside. If your opponent can read your emotions, they can control the interaction. But when you train your eyes to remain steady and reveal nothing, you create mystery, and mystery is powerful. Mystery forces others to imagine what you are thinking, what you are planning, and in that imagination they usually project something stronger than the reality. This projection works in your favor because people naturally fear what they do not understand. When your eyes give them no answer, they fill in the blanks with fear, with doubt, with uncertainty, and those emotions dismantle their confidence long before you ever need to speak. The gaze also works because it forces presence. Most people avoid eye contact because it feels vulnerable. They look down, they look away, they fidget, all in an attempt to escape the intensity of connection. But when you train yourself to hold that connection, when you make it a weapon instead of a weakness, you dominate the space. The enemy can say what they want, they can push, they can provoke, but as long as you control your gaze, you control the encounter. This is how leaders, warriors, and protectors throughout history have commanded respect without needing to raise their voice. The eyes become the silent proof of inner strength. But remember, the power of the gaze is not about staring aggressively. That only makes you look desperate and insecure. Real control is calm, not forced. It is a gaze that is steady, not sharp, intentional, not erratic. Aggression signals fear, calm signals dominance. When your eyes remain soft but unwavering, you are not trying to intimidate. You are simply refusing to surrender your ground. That refusal in silence is what builds intimidation naturally. People fear what they cannot move, what they cannot shake, what they cannot bend. And your gaze becomes the unspoken reminder that you are unshakable. Training your gaze requires discipline, because your instincts will want to betray you. When tension rises, your body will want to reveal it, your eyes will want to run from the pressure. This is where practice comes in. Place yourself in situations where you deliberately hold your gaze under stress, in conversations, in conflicts, in moments of discomfort. Teach your body that silence and stillness under pressure are not threats, they are opportunities to build strength. Over time, you will no longer flinch, you will no longer blink away your composure. You will hold your gaze with ease, and that ease is what makes it powerful. There will be times when silence and the gaze are more powerful than any response you could ever give. Words can be argued against, twisted, or ignored, but silence paired with steady eye contact cannot be dismissed. It lingers. It makes people uncomfortable. It forces them to face themselves. In fact, most people will talk themselves into defeat when faced with your silence because they cannot stand the weight of their own insecurity in the mirror of your gaze. That is how you defeat enemies without ever speaking. You let them collapse under the pressure of what you refuse to release. Your gaze should become a mirror of your discipline, not your emotions. It should say, I am in control, I am composed, I cannot be provoked. The more you train this, the more others will instinctively recognize it in you. They may not even understand why they hesitate around you, why they feel unsettled in your presence, but it will be because of the silent authority you project through your eyes. This is what it means to win without words. You don't overpower others with noise. You paralyze them with stillness, with silence, with the unwavering gaze of someone who cannot be broken. Control of silence is one of the most underestimated yet lethal weapons you can possess, because silence is not emptiness, silence is presence. When people argue, manipulate, or attack you, they rely on noise, they rely on reaction, they rely on pulling you into their emotional storm. But when you master silence, you strip them of that power. You take away the oxygen that fuels their fire, and without oxygen, even the loudest fire burns itself out. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy, it is patience, it is dominance wrapped in calm. In a world that equates noise with strength, choosing silence confuses and destabilizes your enemies because it removes the predictable pattern of reaction. They are expecting every enemy is looking for a response, a clue, or a piece of emotional evidence they can use to gain leverage. The moment you defend yourself too quickly, they know they've touched a nerve. The moment you retaliate loudly, they know they've rattled your composure. But when you give nothing, when you stay composed and quiet, you force them into discomfort. People hate silence more than they hate confrontation because silence makes them confront themselves. They are left alone with their words, their aggression, their insecurity, and without your reaction to validate their behavior, it begins to collapse under its own weight. This is why silence is not passive, it is an active weapon. You are choosing not to engage because you know that engaging would give them control. Instead, you use silence as a shield and as a mirror that reflects their own weakness back onto them. Silence also amplifies perception. When you stop speaking, you start observing. When you stop filling the air with your own words, you begin to notice every detail. The shifts in tone, the tension in someone's body, the cracks in their story. People reveal themselves in silence, often far more than they do in words. Your ability to stay quiet allows you to collect information while they expose themselves trying to fill the void. This is why silence is powerful in negotiations, in conflicts, and in high-stakes situations. The less you say, the more the other side feels pressured to reveal. They will over-explain, over-justify, and eventually contradict themselves as silence is unbearable for the untrained. You win without saying a word simply by letting them sabotage themselves. True silence is not about shutting your mouth. It's about controlling your energy. Even if you aren't speaking, your silence means nothing if your body is restless, if your face is twitching with emotion, if your presence screams agitation. Silence only has power when it is backed by composure. You must teach yourself to sit still, breathe steady, and let calm radiate from you like armor. That calm silence creates tension for the other person because they can't read you, they can't find cracks, they can't figure out how to destabilize you. Silence is most dangerous when it is paired with control. Without control, silence is awkwardness. With control, silence is dominance. Think about the greatest victories in your life. Rarely were they won by shouting louder than everyone else. They were won by holding back, by staying patient, by letting others reveal too much or make mistakes while you stayed grounded. Silence is endurance, and endurance always outlasts aggression. The person who cannot tolerate silence will always expose themselves before you ever need to act. The more you practice this, the more you will notice people folding under the weight of your quiet presence. Their words become weaker, their confidence starts to break, and they begin to realize they cannot move you. That realization is what paralyzes them. Silence is also about choice. Not every battle requires your energy. Not every insult deserves your defense. Not every enemy is worth your voice. By choosing silence, you conserve power for the moments that truly matter. This is where many people lose. They waste energy reacting to every provocation, draining themselves on meaningless battles. When you learn to be silent, you protect your strength. You hold your fire for when it counts. And when that moment comes, your silence has already done half the work by wearing down the other person. leaving them vulnerable and exposed. Training yourself to master silence is not easy because the world teaches you that speaking up, clapping back, and reacting is the only way to prove yourself. But you do not need to prove anything. The one who is silent is the one who already knows their worth, their strength, their ground. Silence says, I don't need to convince you. I don't need to explain myself. I don't need your validation. That level of restraint is intimidating because it shows you are ruled not by ego, not by impulse, but by discipline. Discipline terrifies enemies because they cannot manipulate it. They cannot bait it into foolish reactions. They cannot pull it down into their chaos. Silence is a fortress they cannot breach. The more you practice silence, the sharper your presence becomes. You walk into a room and you don't need to announce yourself. The calm silence around you announces it. You engage in a conflict and you don't need to dominate the conversation. Your refusal to be pulled in dominates it for you. Silence is power disguised as nothingness, and that is why it is so dangerous. People dismiss it, underestimate it, until they feel its weight pressing against them. And by then it's too late because silence has already won. You defeat enemies not by fighting harder, but by refusing to fight on their terms. Silence removes the battleground completely, leaving them to fight against their own words, their own insecurities, their own need for control. That is how silence defeats without lifting a finger, without speaking a word, without losing your ground. Ruthlessness of the mind begins with mastery over patience, because patience is not passive. It is not sitting quietly waiting for life to hand you what you want. It is a deliberate act of control that makes you stronger than those who are impulsive. When you train yourself to be patient, you are not simply waiting, you are watching, you are listening, you are collecting details that other people miss because they are too busy rushing into action. In every interaction, whether it is in conflict, negotiation, or competition, the one who moves first out of impulse often reveals weakness. Patience gives you the advantage because it allows the other person to show their hand before you reveal yours. In silence and stillness, you gain the ability to see through people, to understand their strategies, and to calculate your next move with precision. People mistake patience for weakness, but it is actually restraint, and restraint is one of the highest forms of strength. It takes little effort to explode in anger, to rush in with words, or to make quick moves to satisfy ego. It takes enormous strength to wait, to stay calm, to keep composure when provoked. In those moments of testing, the patient mind builds resilience. You are not running on the fuel of emotions. You are running on strategy. You are not controlled by what they say or do. You are in control of yourself, and therefore in control of the outcome. Patience turns you into a predator instead of prey, because predators wait, observe, and strike when the timing is perfect, while prey moves too quickly out of fear and exposes themselves. Patience also strips power away from those who try to manipulate you. Manipulators thrive on reaction. They push, they provoke, and they rely on you to give them the response they are fishing for. The moment you refuse to react, their game falls apart. They become uncomfortable, restless, and begin to make mistakes. Your patience forces them to reveal themselves because they cannot function without immediate feedback. This is why the patient mind always wins, because it drains the enemy of their strength before you even engage. You don't defeat them by fighting harder. You defeat them by letting them exhaust themselves while you conserve your energy. When you practice patience, you also give yourself the power of timing. Timing is everything. A word spoken too soon loses its impact, an action taken too early falls flat. But when you wait, when you strike at the exact moment the other side is vulnerable, your move becomes unstoppable. Timing comes only to those who are willing to hold back and trust their discipline. It is this patience that separates the reactive from the powerful. The impatient are loud, reckless, and desperate. The patient are calm, precise, and decisive. You only need one move to end the game, and patience ensures that move comes at the right time. Patience does not mean doing nothing. It means doing the internal work while you wait. You sharpen your mind, you study your surroundings, you build your strength in silence, so that when the time comes you are more prepared than anyone else in the room. This is why people who rush rarely succeed long term, because while they are burning out in noise, the patient ones are storing energy, building knowledge, and aligning themselves for maximum impact. By the time the opportunity arrives, the impatient are too tired or too scattered to seize it, but the patient are ready to dominate it without hesitation. In life, you will notice that those who can sit with discomfort, those who can hold their silence while being provoked, those who can resist the urge to show their hand always end up in control. Their enemies destroy themselves because they cannot handle the stillness. Their competitors lose because they reveal too much too soon. Their manipulators fail because they cannot break through the wall of calm. This is what patience gives you. The ability to win battles without fighting them, to win arguments without speaking them, and to win wars without wasting energy. It is an invisible weapon that paralyzes those who underestimate it. Training patience requires practice. You must intentionally put yourself in situations where you are tempted to react and choose to hold back. Every time you resist the urge to jump in, you build a stronger foundation of control. Every time you stay calm while others lose their temper, you increase your power. Every time you let others reveal themselves while you stay quiet, you sharpen your edge. Over time, patience becomes not something you practice but something you embody. It becomes part of who you are, and once it does, you become untouchable. Patience is not just about waiting on others. It is also about waiting on yourself. It is understanding that your growth, your goals, and your power take time. You don't rush the process because rushing produces weakness, but patience produces mastery. You learn to trust the long game, to stay steady when progress feels slow, because you know the results will be far greater than anything gained through shortcuts. Patience builds discipline, discipline builds consistency, and consistency builds greatness. Those who rush may appear ahead in the short term, but those who are patient always win in the end, because their foundation is stronger, their vision is clearer, and their timing is flawless. When you master patience, you master yourself, and when you master yourself, no enemy, no manipulator, no competitor can break you. Patience makes you unpredictable. It makes you unshakable, and it makes you untouchable. It is the sharpest edge of a ruthless mind because it is silent, invisible, and unstoppable. The impatient will always fall into traps, but the patient will always set them. The impatient will always break under pressure, but the patient will always endure. And in endurance lies victory, not through noise or chaos, but through calm, deliberate, and ruthless patience that defeats everything in its path. A ruthless mind is not only defined by strength, but by the power of silence, because silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of control. Most people cannot sit in silence. They feel the need to fill the void with chatter, explanations, or unnecessary details. They expose themselves by speaking too much, by rushing to justify, by trying to prove their worth with words. The one who understands silence knows that words should never be wasted. Silence is strategy. It forces others to question themselves, to feel uncomfortable, to reveal their insecurities. When you master silence, you no longer give away your energy to noise. You let others waste theirs while you remain in control. Silence in conflict is one of the strongest forms of dominance. When someone tries to provoke you, they expect a reaction. They expect you to fight back with words or with anger. The moment you stay silent, you disrupt their plan. You deny them the fuel they are looking for. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their aggression back onto them. They begin to stumble, they begin to question, and their own frustration turns inward. This is why silence is more powerful than shouting. Because shouting shows you have been triggered, but silence shows you cannot be moved. You become unshakable when you refuse to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. In silence, you are also listening, truly listening. While others talk, you gather intelligence. Every word they say reveals something about who they are, what they want, and where their weaknesses lie. People reveal more than they realize when they speak, and the one who speaks less learns more. This is how silence becomes your weapon, not just in arguments, but in every interaction. You gain knowledge others throw away. You see patterns others overlook, and you prepare strategies others cannot anticipate. Your silence is not emptiness, it is a net catching everything valuable in the air, and that information becomes your advantage. Silence also builds presence. There is something unsettling about a person who does not rush to speak, who is comfortable in their own stillness. It creates a sense of authority. People lean in, they wait for your words, because when you finally choose to speak, they know it will matter. Silence gives weight to your voice. Every word you choose carries impact, because it is not drowned out by excess. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the one who remains calm and measured commands respect. The quiet strength of silence is often louder than the loudest voice in the room. You must understand that silence is not passive, it is active control. It is the refusal to let anyone dictate your tempo. It is the discipline of holding back when you could easily respond. It is the mental toughness to sit in discomfort and not give in to the urge to fill the air. Most people fail here because silence makes them feel weak, vulnerable, or exposed, but in truth, it is the opposite. The one who cannot tolerate silence reveals their lack of self-control, while the one who embraces it shows unbreakable strength. That strength intimidates, it paralyzes, and it shifts the balance of power in your favor. Silence dismantles manipulation. Manipulators rely on pulling you into conversation, forcing reactions, or trapping you with words. They thrive on emotional responses. But when you respond with silence, you give them nothing to work with. Their tactics collapse because silence creates a void they cannot control. They become desperate to fill it, and in doing so, they reveal themselves. The calm stillness of silence exposes games, it exposes lies, and it makes the manipulator powerless. You don't need to fight them directly. You just let their own words destroy them, while you sit back in disciplined silence, watching them unravel. The power of silence also extends beyond conflict. It sharpens your inner world. Silence is where clarity is built, where the mind resets, where the noise of the world cannot touch you. When you spend time in silence, you learn to hear your own thoughts, you learn to trust your intuition, and you strengthen your focus. Silence becomes your training ground, where you sharpen your mental edge away from distractions. This is why strong minds are often comfortable in solitude, because silence is not something they fear, it is something they use to recharge and prepare for the battles ahead. A ruthless mind thrives in silence because it knows that stillness builds power. To wield silence as a weapon, you must recondition yourself. Stop rushing to respond, stop feeling the need to defend every point, stop exposing your emotions through words. Practice pausing. Practice observing without speaking. Practice letting others fill the air while you remain calm. Each time you hold back, you strengthen the grip of your mind. Each time you resist the urge to explain, you become harder to read. Each time you stay silent, you learn something about them and everything about yourself. Over time, silence becomes second nature, and with it comes an aura of control no one can ignore. Silence is the mark of restraint, and restraint is the mark of strength. Anyone can shout, anyone can argue, anyone can speak endlessly to prove their point, but it takes true discipline to remain still, to withhold, to choose when and if to speak. That choice gives you the power to control not just conversations, but outcomes. Silence paralyzes enemies because it forces them to fight battles in their own minds, battles you never need to engage in. And that is the ultimate advantage: to win without speaking, to dominate without moving, to conquer without effort. Because silence itself does the work for you. A ruthless mind is not only built through strategy and discipline, but through the sharpening of inner silence. Because silence is not weakness, it is the training ground of mastery. In a world where people fear being alone with their own thoughts, those who embrace silence rise above the noise. Silence is where the mind sharpens its edge, where emotions are stripped of control, and where clarity takes root. When you deliberately place yourself in silence, away from distractions, away from endless chatter, you begin to hear what others cannot hear, the truth beneath the noise. The silence becomes your forge, shaping resilience, sharpening focus, and turning chaos into order. It is not an escape, it is training, a space where you strip yourself of dependence on validation, attention, or approval. The more comfortable you become in silence, the more dangerous your mind becomes, because it no longer craves external noise to feel alive. Silence is the place where self-control is refined. Most people fear quiet because they are faced with their own emotions, insecurities, and doubts. But this confrontation is necessary. To build a ruthless mind, you must learn to face yourself without distraction. In silence, you learn how to regulate your breathing, your thoughts, your reactions. You begin to observe your own mental patterns instead of being enslaved by them. This is the foundation of emotional discipline, the ability to control what is happening inside when everything outside is pushing for a reaction. When you practice sitting in silence, you are training your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. You are preparing yourself to withstand storms without breaking, because you already trained in stillness. The sharpening of inner silence also builds unshakable focus. Noise scatters the mind, but silence gathers it. In silence, you can direct all of your mental energy toward one point, like a blade honed to perfection. This is how you outlast distractions, how you master consistency, how you move toward your goals with relentless precision. A ruthless mind cannot be distracted easily, because it has learned to live without constant stimulation. When others panic in boredom, you thrive. When others need chaos to feel alive, you find power in stillness. That kind of focus is rare, and because it is rare, it becomes an edge that sets you apart from those who cannot handle silence. Silence also strengthens your ability to read the world. When you are comfortable with quiet, you listen deeper. You notice details others miss. You sense shifts in tone, body language, or intention. You see what is not said, not just what is spoken. This is why silence makes you a better strategist, because your mind is trained to observe without rushing. Others waste energy talking, justifying, or defending themselves, while you use silence to gather intelligence. Knowledge is power, but silence is the key that unlocks knowledge. By sharpening your inner silence, you are equipping yourself to see patterns others overlook, to anticipate outcomes others cannot imagine. In silence, you also cultivate resilience. The world is loud, filled with constant demands, opinions, and judgments. Most people are swept away by this noise, losing themselves in the chaos. But when you train your mind in silence, you create an anchor. No matter how loud the outside world gets, you know how to return to your inner stillness, where nothing can shake you. That stillness becomes your shield, your safe ground, your weapon. Others may crumble under pressure, but you endure, because you already mastered silence in your own mind. The ruthless mind does not break in noise, because it is sharpened in quiet. Another truth is that silence builds presence. A person who does not need to fill the air with words commands attention. Their very stillness radiates power. People feel unsettled by silence because it forces them to confront themselves. When you are not afraid of silence, you carry an aura that unsettles others. They lean in, waiting for you to speak, because they know when you do, it will matter. Silence makes your words heavier, your presence stronger, and your authority unquestionable. The sharpened silence within you projects outward, paralyzing those who thrive on noise, and revealing the strength of your mind without a single action. Sharpening silence is also about detachment. When you sit in silence, you learn to let go of unnecessary attachments, the need to argue, the urge to react, the hunger for approval. You realize how much energy people waste in noise and how much power is reclaimed in stillness. This detachment allows you to step back from conflicts, to respond from strength instead of emotion, to act when it matters and remain quiet when it does not. That control is what makes your mind ruthless. It cannot be dragged into games or weakened by impulse. Silence teaches you to conserve your strength until the moment it needs to be unleashed. To sharpen inner silence, you must practice it with intention. Disconnect from noise, create spaces where no distractions can reach you. Sit in stillness even when it feels uncomfortable. At first, it will feel restless, almost unbearable. But with time, you will find a calmness that nothing can disturb. You will notice your thoughts slowing down, your emotions becoming clearer, your mind becoming sharper. This is the silent conditioning of a ruthless mind. The unseen training that builds strength without anyone knowing. And when you step back into the world, you carry that sharpened silence with you like armor, like a blade hidden beneath calm hands. Those who encounter you will feel it, though they won't know why, because true silence speaks without words. The sharpening of inner silence is not about avoiding the world. It is about mastering it. Silence does not mean absence of power. It means concentrated power. It means you are not moved by noise, not broken by distractions, not manipulated by chaos. Your silence becomes your dominance. It paralyzes enemies, it unsettles manipulators, and it fortifies your spirit. The ruthless mind does not fear silence. It wields it. And once you master it, you will find that silence is not emptiness at all, but the most powerful sound the world will ever hear. To master the art of defeating without words, one must build the discipline of controlling energy and conserving power until it is absolutely necessary to act. Most people live in constant reaction, giving away their energy in arguments, in explanations, in trying to prove themselves to those who don't deserve it. They waste their strength in noise, and in doing so, they make themselves weak. But when you learn to hold back, to conserve your energy like a warrior sharpening a sword, you become unshakable. Every time you resist the urge to respond impulsively, you are training yourself in power. Every time you walk away from a fight that only feeds the ego, you are teaching your mind to rise above. And every time you choose restraint over reaction, you are gathering energy that can later be used with precision and force. Power is not in the constant use of strength. It is in the discipline to control when and how it is released. Energy is like currency. You spend it or you save it. People who constantly argue, complain, gossip, or try to prove their worth are spending their energy recklessly, leaving themselves drained and vulnerable. But when you understand the importance of conservation, you stop giving your energy to meaningless battles. You stop feeding toxic people with your reactions, you stop letting negativity steal your focus, and you stop wasting your power on things that do not elevate you. Instead, you save your energy for the moments that matter. That conservation builds an aura of strength around you, because people begin to realize they cannot pull you into their chaos. They cannot manipulate you into emotional reactions. They cannot make you dance to their noise. You are not a puppet. You are the one pulling the strings because you are in control of your energy. The conservation of power also teaches patience. In a world that celebrates constant reaction, patience is a weapon. It allows you to observe while others rush, to calculate while others panic, to act with precision while others act in desperation. Patience creates advantage. By waiting, you gather more information. You see the bigger picture, you anticipate moves before they happen. This is how you defeat enemies without saying a word. Not by rushing into their traps, but by letting them reveal themselves. They tire themselves out trying to provoke you, trying to drag you into a battle, while you remain still, conserving your power. And when the moment comes to act, you act with such clarity and precision that they are paralyzed, because they wasted their strength while you guarded yours. When you conserve energy, you also project confidence. People can sense when someone is centered, when their strength is not easily drained. It creates a presence that demands respect without demanding attention. It is the quiet assurance of someone who doesn't need to prove themselves because they know the strength they carry within. That confidence unnerves those who rely on noise and intimidation to control others. They realize they cannot break you with words, they cannot drain you with arguments, they cannot distract you with chaos. You hold your energy like a weapon hidden in plain sight, and that restraint becomes more intimidating than any loud display of force. Conserving energy also strengthens your mental resilience. Every time you resist reacting to negativity, you are rewiring your mind to become stronger, calmer, and more focused. You are building the habit of not being swayed by outside forces. This resilience is what allows you to stand firm when life tests you. Challenges will come, enemies will rise, but if your energy is conserved and your focus intact, you cannot be easily defeated. You know how to channel your strength, and because of that, you outlast those who scatter theirs in every direction. They burn out while you endure, and endurance is often the greatest weapon of all. There is also a deeper discipline here, the ability to detach from ego. Ego wants to respond, to fight, to be right, to prove, but true power has nothing to prove. When you step back from the pull of ego, you conserve enormous amounts of energy. You stop chasing validation. Stop justifying yourself. Stop trying to win meaningless arguments. Instead, you direct that energy into growth, into mastery, into building something greater. That shift changes everything because you are no longer controlled by what others think or say. You have mastered the art of holding your ground without noise. And that silence itself becomes dominance. Conserving energy doesn't mean weakness. It means control. Weakness is when anyone can push your buttons and make you react. Strength is when you decide who, what, and when is worth your energy. This control unsettles people because they realize they cannot manipulate you. They throw insults, you remain calm. They spread lies, you stay focused. They provoke, you don't move. And in that silence, in that control, you defeat them. They are drained while you remain full. They lose while you conserve. That is the essence of conserving energy to win. Knowing that not every battle deserves your strength, but the battles you choose to fight, you win because you arrive with everything intact. To practice this, you must build daily habits of restraint. Pause before reacting. Ask yourself if a response is worth your energy. Step away from arguments that lead nowhere. Limit time with people who drain you. Protect your focus by guarding what you consume, what you engage with, and where you direct your mind. Over time, this practice becomes natural, and you develop an inner calm that cannot be disturbed. You conserve not only energy but peace, and that peace becomes your greatest advantage. While the world is frantic, you are steady. While others scatter, you align. And in that discipline, you build a mind so ruthless that it defeats enemies without speaking a word. When you conserve energy and power, you create a force that is silent but unstoppable. People underestimate you because you don't waste yourself in noise. But when you choose to act, you act with such strength that it leaves them paralyzed. That is the paradox of true power. It is not found in constant display but in disciplined restraint. The more energy you conserve, the stronger you become, the sharper your presence, and the more untouchable your spirit. And when you reach that level, enemies defeat themselves trying to fight a battle you never even enter, while you walk away untouched. Victorious without a word, silence has always been underestimated by people who think noise equals power. But the truth is, silence can be the most intimidating force in any confrontation. When you master the ability to stay silent, to withhold your words, you take away the very weapon your enemies depend on. Most people expect you to react, to argue back, to explain yourself, or to defend your position. They feed on your words because once you speak, you reveal your emotions, your thoughts, your weaknesses. But when you stay silent, you starve them of that fuel. You deny them the satisfaction of knowing what you are thinking, how you are feeling, or whether their tactics are working. In that moment, silence becomes your shield, and at the same time your sword. It protects you from manipulation, and it strikes your enemies with fear because they cannot control what they cannot predict. There is a deep psychology behind silence that many overlook. When you don't respond, people are forced to sit with their own words and actions. They start questioning themselves, replaying what they said, wondering if they crossed a line, doubting their strength. Silence creates space for discomfort, and that discomfort often makes people unravel on their own. Enemies want to provoke you, they want to see you lose control, but when you don't give them that satisfaction, their own aggression starts to turn inward. They grow restless, insecure, and even fearful. This is how silence paralyzes. It takes the power away from your enemy and makes them fight against their own mind. You don't have to lift a finger or raise your voice. All you have to do is hold your ground and let your silence echo louder than any argument ever could. Silence also carries authority. Think about the leaders, the warriors, the individuals who command respect without ever raising their voices. Their presence speaks louder than any words could. People lean in when they talk because they don't waste their breath on noise. That is the same effect silence gives you when you use it as a weapon. It signals discipline, it signals confidence, and it signals that you are in control. Most people lose power when they talk too much because the more they speak, the more they reveal. But those who stay silent when tested project a strength that others can feel in the air. It is the calmness of someone who does not need to prove themselves, someone who knows their power is greater than words. That calmness unnerves enemies because they realize they cannot break you, and that realization is often more destructive than any direct confrontation. Another reason silence is so powerful is because it creates mystery. People fear what they cannot understand, and silence makes you unpredictable. Enemies don't know if you are planning, if you are ignoring them, or if you are preparing to strike. That uncertainty keeps them off balance. They expect noise, they expect reaction, they expect conflict, but when you give them silence, they don't know how to proceed. They are left in the dark second, guessing themselves while you maintain complete control. Mystery always creates an advantage because it forces others to reveal more than you, while you remain hidden and protected. That imbalance of knowledge and exposure shifts the power to your side, and silence is the tool that gives it to you. Silence also shows restraint, and restraint is a form of dominance. When you are able to hold your tongue in moments of provocation, you are proving that you are not a slave to your emotions. You are proving that you cannot be controlled by anger, fear, or ego. That restraint signals to others that you are operating on a higher level of discipline, and it makes them wary of you. People who cannot control themselves are always easier to defeat because their emotions expose them. But those who master silence, those who keep their thoughts locked away, are the most difficult to challenge. Enemies cannot predict your next move, and that unpredictability paralyzes them. They start to feel as if every word they say is wasted, every attack useless, and that frustration only grows the longer your silence holds. In conflict, silence can shift the entire balance of power. When someone insults you and you stay silent, it shows their words hold no weight against you. When someone tries to provoke you and you stay silent, it shows they have no control over you. That lack of reaction is more powerful than shouting or defending yourself because it strips away their influence. They realize they cannot touch you emotionally, and that realization destroys their confidence. You don't need to prove your strength with words, because your silence proves it for you. And when they are left grasping at empty attempts to get a reaction, they begin to lose their own sense of control. That is the true victory of silence. It makes enemies defeat themselves without you ever lifting a hand. Silence is not weakness, it is strategy. It doesn't mean you are passive, it means you are selective. You choose when to speak, when to reveal, and when to act. That choice gives you power because your words carry more weight when they are rare. Silence turns your voice into something people pay attention to, because when you finally do speak, they know it matters. That is how you use silence to build authority. You don't waste it on arguments or noise. You use it to amplify your presence, to maintain control, and to keep your enemies at a distance. And when you combine silence with observation, you become even more powerful. You see everything, you hear everything, but you reveal nothing. That makes you untouchable. In the end, silence becomes a weapon because it denies enemies the very thing they crave: reaction. They want you to lose your composure, to reveal your thoughts, to show them where you are weak. But when you stay silent, they get nothing. They are forced to battle themselves, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, to question every move they make. And while they crumble under the weight of their own noise, you stand unshaken, your silence louder than any word they could ever throw at you. This is how you defeat enemies without saying a word, by turning silence into your shield, your weapon, and your ultimate display of strength.